o'clock. Hello, Thunder Laser community. I'm Z Kessler. You might have talked to me over email or on socials. I do marketing and education at Thunder Laser Canada, and we have Shannon here. Do you want to introduce yourself, Shannon?
Shannon, I run Thunder Laser as well as lots of other maker type projects.
You might have talked to him on the phone if you have questions about lasers.
Yeah, I'm the one that answers the calls.
And then we have Ron.
Hi, I'm Ron Crown. I'm a maker for years and years. I run a CNC router as well as an awesome Thunder Laser. My main background is in animation, but like I said, I've been making things for a decade at least, for my whole life actually. The end.
We have Colin. Thanks so much for joining us, Colin.
Hi. Yeah, I'm LightBurn's support manager. So while I don't have a Thunder personally, I have dealt with many Thunder issues and questions and people who use Thunders all the time.
Yeah, you might have seen Colin on the LightBurn forums, which are, by the way, awesome if you haven't spent a lot of time in them yet. Definitely been handy for me as I'm learning how to use the bolt. Yeah, so I invited this group to come together. It's kind of a funny story. I met Ron because he lives on the same small island as me and owns a Thunder Laser. So we came together and I thought, oh, this would be kind of fun to run a webinar. And then we were like, hey, let's invite someone from LightBurn too, because yeah, I mean, our customers are always asking questions about LightBurn. And yeah, so I would love to share some different design tips or find out from the community what they want to learn. I'm going to see if there's anyone that's filled out the poll yet. Let's see the results so far. Understanding the basic features, vectors and using vector-based designs, how to run materials tests, how to properly use the materials library, creating inlays. Can the organizer see some of the results if you click on polls so that you can see the same thing I can see? As more people come in, we can get more feedback on that. But I thought I would start out with basically just talking about LightBurn and how it was developed. What's the story behind LightBurn? I hear it has kind of an interesting story. So I'll leave it to Colin to give a little bit of an introduction, and especially for some of you that might not know too much about it yet, maybe you're a new laser user.
Yeah. So LightBurn started being developed, I think it was 2017, 2016, somewhere back in that day. And it was started by Jason. I know him as Oz. And he bought a pretty typical red and black CO2 laser from overseas, showed up, and you're given, with Ruida controllers, you're given RDWorks. That's the software it's bundled with. And being a programmer and hating bad software, Jason saw this as a problem, and over a little bit of time, how do I explain this? He reverse engineered the protocol that is used to communicate with that laser and wrote his own software, originally called JLaser. And that grew into an early beta of LightBurn. And I actually personally had a similar path. I bought a laser to make topographical maps for a customer I had at the time. And I was using RDWorks, and I was making like 3, maybe 5 a day on a good day. Through some roundabout way, I ended up on a beta of LightBurn before it was for sale, and I've been using it ever since. So I've been using LightBurn since 2018. Ran my own business with it for 3 some odd years. And it's watching it come from the 0.8 point something days really early to where it is now. It's quite a journey, and we're constantly ramping up releases of new features faster and faster as we add headcount. So it's an interesting place to be, very dynamic place to work. But yeah, LightBurn is now one of the go-to softwares for people to do design work on and to run their lasers. It's a mix of both, which is kind of fun. Yeah.
My experience is I ran RDWorks for like 8 years, and then when we got the Thunder Laser, I'd heard LightBurn was good, so I threw it on for the noobs in the makerspace. And then after about 15 minutes of using it, I'm like, I am never going back to RDWorks.
Yeah.
It was just like a whoops, I'm out of here. And now in our makerspace, we bought a bunch of licenses and use it for training for how to make vectors. We don't like, most of the time people are not using LightBurn for the laser. They're using it because it's such a good platform for vector design.
Yeah, it's way more powerful than people think. We did a video recently. It's on our YouTube channel. If you look, it's how to use node editing. And I learned something from watching that video. Like one of the biggest things we get asked is like, where's the eraser tool? And fundamentally, eraser tools are for bitmap editing, so pixels. But if you watch that node editing video, you'll learn about how to delete like line by line or point by point on a vector design. It adds vector design superpowers to you if you watch it. So
I am adding that to my list of things to do.
Yeah.
That says a lot when the person that works there is like, I learned something.
Oh, I learn every day.
One of the first things I wanted to just touch on, because myself, I'm a new LightBurn user. And so I installed LightBurn a while ago, and now there's an update. And sometimes new users, we're terrified to press the update button. What
Fair.
if you click that update button, if you dare, what happens? What are the new updates that have come up recently for anybody that's also in the same boat?
Yeah, so our updates in the past have been fairly chunky, if that makes any sense. So we follow something called semantic versioning, where we have a major version. So right now that's 1. Then we have a minor version. Right now it's 5. And then we have patch releases. So 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So we're at 1.5.0 or 1.5.06 right now. And we're going to be doing more minor releases. So it's smaller code chunks, less changes. As we push out those releases, you can hop on our blog or on our forum, and we tell you what's changed. And you don't have to update. And if you do click that button, all it does is take you to our website, and you can download the update if you choose to. We don't automatically update ever, and you're not obligated to update. So LightBurn's licensing system is such that you get LightBurn either with your machine or you buy LightBurn, and you have updates for 1 year, and you can use any version released within that 1 year or previous forever. We're not going to take it away from you. And then if we don't produce features that make you want to renew your updates, that's on us. You don't have to, right? It keeps us honest because we keep producing features so people can, want to renew their updates, which is $30 a year if you choose to. But if we don't, you don't have to. Yeah.
Gotcha. So it's funny in the chat. Curtis wrote 100% me, so it wasn't just me going, should I click the update button?
That's fair.
So one of the first questions, we already have one. So maybe what we could do is for the people who are just learning, maybe we could go through some of the sort of common features that you would see across the screen. We'll sort of start off with Colin doing some of the basic stuff, and then later on I want to go into Ron, because Ron's going to be working with us to offer some courses that are like the way more in-depth stuff for the people that maybe don't have time to sit on the forums and don't have time to watch the videos. And so later on, Ron will get more into like sort of different topics in more complexity. But Colin, would you be willing to just share your screen there and go through some of the basic features? And the first question we have is setting up absolute coordinates. So maybe talking about the coordinates and things like that, because I know for a new user, sometimes that's kind of like a weird thing to figure out at first.
Sure thing. So I've started sharing my screen. Can you guys all see that?
Yep.
Fantastic. Okay, so this is your pretty typical LightBurn layout. Now, LightBurn's layout is configurable. You can always grab things and move them around if they're not in the spot you like them, or turn them on and off. So the first place to know is up here in the window bar. Hoping you guys can see this, but you can turn on and off parts of your layout in your interface. And if you ever screw it up, you just go reset to default layout, and it'll put you right back to where you were. From this layout, we have our design tools on our left. So select tool, you can draw tool, square, polygon, and so on and so forth. This polygon tool is actually interesting because if you go to the shape properties here, you can change how many sides that polygon has. Say we want a heptagon or an octagon. It's the number in shape properties. So when you create a shape, it has a set of properties because it is a shape. It has a list of things. You can change its priority and how it's cut. If you want it to be cut first, you shift its cut order priority. Height, width, you can lock it. You can change the power scale for that feature. So when you run a job, if this one feature should run at 80% instead of 100%, you can force it to do that from shape properties. It's a really powerful little feature.
Ooh, cool.
Yeah.
Shape sorry, Paul. I was going to say I love the shape properties. I don't see very many people talking about it in the forums. But one of the things I use it for regular is like, say I'm cutting small letters and I got like the inside of an O keeps burning out. Instead of putting it on a different layer and change the settings, you just select that part, and in the shape properties just reduce the percentage. And I go in there to fine tune my cuts all the time. It's a great feature.
Yeah, it's like it is the hammer, right? You do exactly what I tell you to. That's how you do that. You also go into your optimization settings down here in the laser panel, and you can change how your cuts are ordered. So if you want it to be cut by layer or priority or by group, you can shift these around and change how LightBurn picks which things to cut first. And there's a bunch of other optimizations which is too deep into, but you can do things like hide backlash, which changes how LightBurn cuts things. It starts from the same side of every cut. If you have a loose machine or an older machine, that can help. Or what you should really do is maintain your machine, do a little maintenance. All these are really good ways to optimize how your cuts work for your specific jobs. If you have small lettering or you're doing big parts, where things start is important, and there are tools to do that within LightBurn to make that job easier.
Someone wants you to show that again. Blake wrote, can you redo that? So I'm guessing about the shape properties, like the
shape property, sure.
Yeah, like
so
that
we can
that popped up with the percentage.
Yeah, so we can pick a shape like this octagon, and then the shape properties button is down in the below the cuts layers window. It's a tab. If you don't have it, you can go to Window, Shape Properties, and turn it on and turn it off, like I just did. Whoops. And so you can select an object, go to Shape Properties, and here you'll see all the adjustments. So we can make it, say, 1,000 millimeters wide, and it gets really big.
That's great. So as a new person, I mean, I'm glad that I have that new person eyes, because some of you on here are all kind of more, you're using it all day, every day. And so I don't know how many of the people that are attending right now, but one of the first things I learned is like, okay, if you're going to cut something out, that's the last thing you want to do rather than the first, because if you do your engraving last after you do your cut, it drops the piece down and then it goes out of focus. So that, I don't know if anyone would find that useful. It's such a basic thing, but have your cut, if it's going to be like cutting around a whole project, do that, drag it down underneath so that you're doing your engrave first and then your cut. And then, it's like one of those small things that, like, when you're just learning, if you don't know, it takes a couple tries to be like, why is this happening?
So that's
then you've got
usually
your whole level of advanced stuff that you just explained as well.
Sorry, I went to the moon with it, but the ordering by layer is really important. So you can see here, I have it defaulting to order by layer, and so it will do my fill layer first, and then this multi-layer, which is fun. If you don't know about sub-layers, I'll tell you all about those, and then it's going to do the image. But if I wanted the image to etch first, I would just bump it up with the arrow keys here. And so now that image will run first. If I go preview, and we can jog and see which order things will go in. Like that.
Yeah, I really like the preview feature, because as I'm learning all the different, ways that this program works, sometimes it's one of the best troubleshooting tools of being like, why is it doing what it's doing? Oh, I see why. Watching the preview can really help.
100%. Yeah, we get that a lot. One of the things we see often is people will turn on like tabs or bridges or add a lead in and lead out. That's under the advanced tab. If I add a lead in, call it 10 millimeters long. the lead-ins and lead-outs mean that you'll be piercing outside of your work, and then you'll come into your cut, and then that can prevent some scorching where the laser starts to enter your cut. And often we'll get a support ticket where someone will say, "Hey, why is it doing this weird like extension on my job?" And I'm like, "Oh, okay. Well, you see it in the preview, you don't see it in your part," and then we'll get them to pop in and see in the advanced settings. Oh, that's where it is. The preview saves us a lot of time as support agents. Right.
I have a question that I've heard from a couple people that is probably a very basic one, but maybe people on here might have had this as well. So when you decide your minimum and maximum power, what determines?
What does that determine? We get to talk about acceleration. This is fun. So say you're cutting a line. When your machine starts, it will be accelerating. It goes from 0 and comes up to say 100, let's just say, for speed. And the min and max dictates while it's accelerating, it starts at the min and then gets up to the max. So if you're coming into, say, a box, you start at 0 speed, and then you accelerate, and then as you come in, you do that corner, your machine's going to slow down because it has to change direction. So the minimum power amount, it will drop to that minimum amount, and then try to accelerate back up to speed, and then slow again, and run that box. So by adjusting those levels, if you're getting overburning in corners, you'll want to drop your minimum percentage down. If you're not getting it cutting through when it's at its full speed, you're going to want to bump that maximum amount up. So you're really just power scaling for how fast your cut is going.
And I have a question on that. Is there a point where if you're cutting something so small, the laser can't get up to full speed, so it never hits your maximum? Would it be somewhere on that ramp between minimum and maximum? Yeah.
Absolutely, yeah. So every machine has an amount that it can accelerate. Like how fast does it move, right? It's not about the final speed. It's how fast can it get up to speed. And if you're doing a bunch of little tiny things, your machine will never hit that top speed. So you're really got to be looking at your minimum number and seeing where that is. Now, with CO2 lasers, there's also a minimum trigger amount. So if you fire your laser at like 5%, most lasers will do that. But if you try to fire at a 3 or a 2%, there's a threshold that you need to pass before your laser will actually fire. So trying to dip below that 5% range, you'll have to test on every individual laser to figure out, okay, what will my laser actually fire at?
That scales with your tube power as well. So at 130 watt tube, that value is higher. So you'll get better results on the low end with the lower wattage tubes, which is why sometimes it's recommended for doing like precise or low power engraving, you use the lower wattage tubes. However, the RF tubes on the bolt, you can go much lower. I don't know if there is a minimum, but you can run it at 0.5% and it'll still work.
Yeah, so radio frequency tubes are different than glass tubes. They have different cooling methods, and they can trigger way faster. So when you have a machine that moves really fast, it helps to be able to fire the laser as fast as the machine can go.
So to go back to the tools, could we just run through? I know we're getting really excited with all these different things. I'm trying to like trigger the things that someone that's just learning might know. So if we could go across like all the tools and just sort of give a quick rundown,
of these guys?
Maybe some neat things that you know about each of them that maybe we don't know.
Sure. Yeah. What about this is the add tabs. So you can add points at which you'd like tabs to be created. So if you're doing a cutout and you don't want your piece to fall into the bed, you can use the add tabs tool to add little bridges that will keep the part from falling into your material. That's fun. The text tool is super powerful. I'm not going to get like deep into variable text because it gets advanced, but you can type text and you can say grab some of the handles here and you can bend your text if you're trying to wrap it onto a trophy or similar. There's all sorts of fun warps built into here. This is a rather new feature. Another fun feature of the text box is you can scroll through and just see what all your fonts look like. With a new version of LightBurn, I think in 1.7, you're going to actually be able to hide texts, or hide fonts rather, from this list that you don't ever use and don't want to use, like wingdings. So you'll be able to hide the things that you don't want to use anymore. That'll be fun.
Well, that's my favorite font. I don't know if I've ever used it.
That is something we've considered because we have a lot of maker spaces. So if someone hides a font that someone uses every day, how do you get that back? So we do think about these things before we push features out. What else we got in here? You can set a laser position by clicking on the page. It's a feature I don't use personally very much, and I'm not connected to a laser, so it won't work for me. But the measure tool, I love the measure tool. So if I have a job and I know how fast, say on a Galvo laser, how fast I can etch an inch squared, I can use this if the preview is pretty good already, but sometimes I do a little bit of manual math, and this will tell you how many curves are in your line. Is it closed? How much area is in your part? And you can use that as a rough guesstimate for how fast things will etch. And you can measure things. Say I want to measure from point A to point B, or just this line. I now know that is 406 millimeters in perimeter, or 101.6 in length. I like that tool. And then we get into the more advanced modifiers down here. So things like offset. I'm going to take this text. What if I draw a circle? And we can offset in and out, change how the offset works. And actually, this will work better with a polygon. Offset in, out, round, bevel, corner. You can delete the original object if you so choose. This is a really nice way to add fillets. But if you don't want to add fillets that way, you can always do it manually. Down here with the radius tool, you can click an edge and add a fillet. Boom. We've made a shield. Easy. Yeah. Anything else you'd like me to go over here? That's the majority of the tools. There's Boolean stuff, which is kind of interesting.
Yeah, the Boolean, I think for new people, it's always a little confusing.
Yeah, I recognize the Booleans are confusing. They're still confusing for me, but one of the things that's really helped me is go to laser tool, or where is it here? Tools, and go to Boolean Assistant. If I can get it to work for me. Boolean Assistant, and I'll bring this window back over. If you use the Boolean Assistant, it'll show you all three or all four without actually doing the thing. You can figure out what works best for you.
I would like to note too that Colin's window, if you go under Edit Settings, he has filled rendering checked so that you can see the fills in real time, which I find super useful. Actually, it would be nice. That'd be one of the things I think would be great to have as a default, because I tell everybody in our training sessions to turn it on.
Yeah, we don't set it as a default because for a few reasons. We have some people have really low powered machines that filled rendering doesn't work well on. If you're using like an old laptop, we don't want to start people off with something that's going to make their experience be bad. We'd rather have them enable something to make it be better. And filled rendering, there's a shortcut to turn on and off wireframe. Can't quite remember it off the top of my head. But there are certain things that having a wireframe is just better for. Like finding corners or finding layered geometry helps a lot. But yes. Or
knowing what you're being able to select something on the inside of something else.
Yeah, you got it. Yeah, I also use dark mode, which is right here. Use dark background. So you can turn that off and everything will get eye-blindingly bright. I don't like that.
We have a question in the chat.
Sure.
Someone more of a compliment too. 5 minutes with Shannon saved me so much time learning the hotkeys. One question is, can you have edit nodes on a shape? Same for the draw tool. I have zero luck with that. When you're in your edit nodes tool, how do I know how to add or insert a node? Maybe you should just look in the chat. It's kind of a long question.
Yeah, I actually can't see the chat for some reason.
So he's as an attendee, so he won't be able to see the chat. But I would say like that video you mentioned at the start from node editing, because I think node editing is a rabbit hole that we could go down along
forever. Yeah.
But I'm going to spend some time in that video for sure.
One thing I do want to show
there's a simple
while we're
answer.
here. Go ahead.
I was going to say to that node editing question, there's a fairly simple answer. When you insert a node into it, then you want to convert it to a Bezier curve instead of a line. So I believe that's just pressing B on the node that you want. Is that correct? I haven't done it for a bit. So no,
yeah, my node editing is rather weak today, but node edit. See, this is the sort of thing I'd like to be in wireframe for. So I'm going to change this to a different color layer. Please don't be fill. I'm going to go ahead.
So if you have two nodes, I'm not even going to share my screen. If you have two nodes with a straight line, click in the middle of the line and drag it. It will force it into a curve and then add Bezier handles to the nodes, and then you can control it as a curve instead of a line.
Yeah. Node edit.
Well, Colin's doing that. Z, I have a. You said about the layer orders that you do the cutting last, and I agree. You do that all the time unless you don't. And recently, I've had two reasons that I've done jobs in the opposite. So one of them, I was making some ornaments, and they were cut out and engraved, but I wanted the engraving to be out of focus because I was getting a better result. It was thin line stuff. So I lifted the material off the bed by a couple millimeters. I cut it. It was 1/4 inch material. So I cut it, and then those pieces dropped down, and then it went over and engraved. And because those pieces had dropped down, it engraved out of focus, and it became a one-step process instead of me having to change things. Although it took me just as long to test it to make sure it's going to work as if I would have probably longer.
Yeah, that so seems like a risky hack.
Yeah, well, like I said, I did test it, and I guess that's my point. When you're making things, I mean, the rules are great, but you have to be willing to set them aside because that's where creativity lives. And yeah, I could have screwed it up just as easily. And like I said, it probably took me more time to figure it out, but now I know that tool. Another time I was cutting paper, and the paper itself was quite warped. So I discovered that if I cut out the small pieces first, then they would lay flat, and then I'd go back and cut the inside. So rules are great, but be willing to be creative and change them if you need to.
Absolutely.
It's like they say art is knowing which mistakes to keep, right? Like don't try
exactly.
and learn.
And the point that I make is you really need to understand the correct way before you successfully can break it. I mean, you can't just do it wrong from the beginning without knowing the right way, because then you're not going to know what you're not working.
One thing I wanted to touch on while we're here is you can go to the LightBurn Docs website, and we have a hotkey guide. Just print this out, put it by your laser. It's quite handy.
I feel like this is something we should send in a newsletter and possibly add it to Reed's training, documentation. For sure. I had kind of forgotten about this, but I have this printed out somewhere.
Yeah, and then
if you go memorized in your brain.
Yeah.
If you search for the node tool, you'll see that video.
You can make hotkeys for ones that don't exist as well.
Yes,
so
you can.
It's quite a
we have one question that's saying that the Boolean with the Boolean subtract. One of the things that I just one of these features that I love, like a larger amount than I should, is that when you do a Boolean subtract, you can Control Z and do it again, and it'll reverse it, which is like a really simple, but it saves me. I don't know. It's just I hate that in Illustrator it doesn't have that.
Yeah, so we try to make most of our tools. It depends how the tool is coded. Some of our stuff is hard coded, like the warp and deform tools. I think are now not. I think you can now undo from those. Initially, when we did all the math and wrote, and we are amazing devs, wrote the code, it was permanent. You did the warp, that's how it was. But we don't like that. We like to be able to undo. So oftentimes we'll write something, get it working, and then there's some refactoring that happens, and the tools improve as we go. And that's why having updates, it's a good idea.
I have a question to Ron's clever hack there of dropping things down and using that to automatically defocus your engrave. Is it possible, or is there any interest in being able to change your Z height per layer?
Yeah, you can do that, and you can do it per material as well. I don't do it a lot personally, but if I remember correctly, there's the U offset. If you have a U axis, so that's a powered Z, you can use the U offset to move your head up, or in the, how do you do this again? Where is the Z offset here? So I have Z offset disabled, but if your machine has Z offset enabled in the device settings, where is Z offset?
I'm gonna dig into that because I feel like I've always been a little bit nervous about changing my Z offset when I'm using the laser, just because head crashes, I'm allergic to those. But going down would be fine.
Going up is typically less dangerous, but yes.
Sorry, the bed going down, the head going up, but we move the bed down.
Sorry.
I have to get my rhythm worked out here. I keep talking at the wrong time. Colin, that only applies to machines that have an auto Z control, like a manual one, like the Thunder I have. Setting something in LightBurn isn't going to change the laser.
If you can't control the Z axis of your laser with your controller, then no, none of this will work for you. Yep. So in this case, like I've set a 10 millimeter offset, and you can see it's 10 millimeters in, so it'll go into the material. You can go -10, and we'll go out.
I didn't even know that. Could we maybe touch on, unless there's more to say on this, feel free to continue if there's more to say.
I mean, there's so much I can't cover it all, but happy to touch on anything specific. Yeah.
Exactly. So someone earlier was asking about the coordinates. Can we touch on that for a second?
Yeah. What about the coordinate system are you looking to know? So LightBurn typically works in a positive workspace, which means this lower left corner is 0 in most situations. And then on your Thunders, it may be wherever your machine homes, and then it will go, up. Yeah. So then you work positive and negative in that case. How do I show you from, go to devices? Let's look at Thunderbolts, Ruida. So when you set your axes lengths, there will be this. Where is your X0, Y0? And so wherever your machine homes to when you turn it on is going to be where you set this. This should be only set up once. And that's, yeah. And so you can see I changed it, and now my orientation of everything changed because my 0 point flipped.
So
are all Thunder lasers oriented on the top left? The absolute coordinate?
Yes. Yeah. And then when you change to absolute coordinates, I mean, I know that depending, I guess for some people they're not using the camera. Like for me, I use the camera, so I'm using different settings than other people would use. But if you don't have a camera, you're probably gonna be like framing on the controller more so, right?
Yeah. So the most important green dot on the screen is this little one here. And that shows where LightBurn assumes your laser head to be if you're not using absolute coordinates. So absolute coordinates, you can see the green dots move to the top right of the screen. And so that's where everything in LightBurn is done from. It assumes we're going to work from that point. If you change to, say, user origin or current position, the current position and user origin are the same right now because I haven't set a custom user origin on the control or in LightBurn. But this green dot is now where it presumes everything to be. So you're going to want you to have your laser head there, and then it's going to work up from that point. You can change where that origin is from the job origin in the laser window. You can say I can run it around the square or move it to the center of what I'm cutting. If I disable layers and I have it on, say, the side, we can shift where that will go. Where's my... Well, you know, oh yeah. So if we move parts around, we can see it moves with the dot. We do have this all covered in the docs, and it does a much better way, explanation than I will here.
So someone's specifically asking about absolute coordinates. So
okay, that's
in
the
what
thing. I'm going to need a
situations
question.
do you use absolute coordinates, for example?
So
absolute coordinates is really handy if you have a jig. One thing that I use absolute coordinates for. So if I have a job, I'll just move this all out of the way, and I've created a jig that kind of looks like that. Then absolute coordinates will allow you to do things around your jig without moving your jig. So you can place that anywhere and adjust.
From my perspective as a trainer, I tell people by default, use user origin and only use absolute coordinates with a jig. And then I love the feature under the move tab where I can save remember points. And then when I set my jig in, it'll remember where a specific point is. Also using absolute coordinates with the camera and using absolute coordinates with print and cut are useful. But most of the time I'm using user origin.
Yeah, if you end up in a situation where your machine errors out, it says like scan error or it's going to go out of bounds. It's typically because there's geometry way off your screen. If you're in user origin, see it's like way off in the distance now. One of the first things we say to people when they get those errors is, can try running from absolute coordinates, and it'll give you a different error message, which is like part out of bounds.
I agree with Shannon. I use user origin almost all the time, and even when I make a jig, I'll burn in a coordinate point. So if for whatever reason I don't put the jig at absolute coordinate, I still know where to line up the laser for cutting on it. The question was setting up absolute. I don't know if I'm reading it wrong, but he said setting up absolute coordinates, and the setup is like Colin showed. When you set up your device, you choose where it's going to be, and once you've done that, you don't need to do anything else, or you can't really do anything else. That's where your absolute is. I mean, how you use it, but setting it up is just about setting up your device. Is that right?
I would advise anyone to go and read the page here. So there are things like you must have a homing switches to use absolute coordinates because your machine needs to know where it is, that sort of thing. And then I believe there's also a video, but this goes into detail about how to use all of these features, and all the features of the move window are right there as well. The docs are very thorough. We have a whole team dedicated to the docs.
It's one of my favorite. I use many software packages, and I have to say LightBurn documentation has got to be one of the best out there. The search bar alone makes it heads and tails above everybody else. So.
Yeah, I'm excited about the new CNC release.
Oh yeah, everybody's excited about the CNC release. I have nothing to tell you about it besides it's going to be called Millmage, and it will be out in 2024.
Now, when you say CNC, what do you mean, Shannon? What kind of, like a CNC router?
There may or may not be. They may or may not be working on a new CNC product.
Okay, they're not.
For yes, CNC router.
You know what I find interesting is all these machines are CNC. The router, the laser, a desktop printer, they're all technically CNC machines.
Our embroidery machine is a CNC machine.
Exactly. So.
Yeah. Router software is more appropriate.
So because we sort of started early, I'm just going to go err on the safe side because I'm hoping it'll just let us go overtime, right? I don't think it's going to kick us off, but just in case, who knows what's going to happen. I would like Ron to maybe give a little bit of background about himself there and some projects that he's been working on. And yeah, Ron's going to be working with us. So if anyone needs, someone bought a laser, they run a business, or they just want to skip to the part of becoming kind of an expert pretty quickly and maybe don't have the time. Ron's going to be offering some in-depth classes. So I'll let Ron take over for a few minutes here and talk a little bit more about what he does and sort of what that might look like. And then we'll if pending that everything works out good with the webinar not ending in 5 minutes, then we'll run back and we'll talk more about the different tools and everything like that. But just erring on the side of safety because this program is kind of new to us. So.
I've been my main background is animation. I've been a professional animator for way too many years. I don't even want to say. And at a certain point, we went from hand drawing on paper to computers, and the first thing was using vectors. Like right from the beginning, computer animation was based on vectors. So I've been working with vector software, which is the same as LightBurn since literally 1990 something. And because it's animation, I was using it for design, for creativity, for making the image. My approach to software is software is a tool, right? I mean, obviously, I don't think that's like a big thing, but it's a tool, and learning to use it, it's just like learning any tool in your toolbox. Once you learn how to use it, it's more about the thing you're making than the tool you're using, if that makes sense. So I always approach from a design point of view, a final product point of view, and then figure out what tools I need to create that. The same as if you were doing it by hand. You know, I need a chisel for this and a hammer for that. In this case, I need LightBurn, but within LightBurn, I need this tool to make that. I need this tool to make that. So I'm not here to talk about, you know, every little button on LightBurn. I don't even know every little button on LightBurn yet. But I'm really good at and really solid at figuring out how to use the tool to get to the final product, and that's what I want to share with people. So I've been, like I said, I've been using vectors for a long time, but I also see that that's one of the weak points online. Is a lot of people get into this with a bitmap mentality, using pixels, and vectors throw them right off the bat because they're completely different. They're not difficult, they're just completely different understanding of how you control a vector over how you control a pixel. So my suggestion to anyone who really wants to get into this is, first, learn everything you can about vector control, and then which you can get from the documentation in LightBurn. And then once you understand how to draw a line, a shape, because there's certain fundamentals, like vectors don't have lines. Vectors are all paths. They don't have any width dimension. They only have length. There's lots of tricks to make them look like a line, but if you need a path to describe a whole shape. I see a lot of people saying, oh, this line is, you know, it's like, how do I make my line thicker? And right away, fundamentally, it's not a line, so you can't make it thicker. I'm talking too much right now. I hear myself. But I want to point out, like, you really need to go to the basic foundations to get good at anything, right? So learn what a vector is, and then when you come into LightBurn, you look at the vector tools, they all make sense. You can do anything you need. And I don't even know, Z, if I answered your question. I just kind of went off on a ramble.
Oh, no, that's perfect. I think that's a great understanding of sort of how you came to know as much as you know, and how you approach design, and like having that mindset it really makes a lot of sense of how you ended up sort of using the tools you use. Do you want to talk a little bit more about the course that you're offering for people if they're interested to sort of get more in depth and become closer to an expert quickly?
Yeah, I mean, it's fine to call it a course. I call it a course, but it's really, I view it much more as a mentoring thing. It's not a predetermined. I have a predetermined roadmap, but it's not like on Tuesday we're learning this no matter what. It's completely open as a mentor thing. So if we get there on Tuesday and you're not ready to learn that, then we're not going to worry about that. We'll focus on what you need. Or if you have a specific project that you need to know just the tools and just the approach to create that, we'll focus on that. I'm basically offering, my knowledge and experience to be applied in any way that you need it. Now, that being said, if you've just bought a laser and you want the whole deal, then I have basically a four-step program, a four-step course that takes us through each category, and we touch on it. And once again, there's not enough time to teach everybody every single button and every single possibility. My goal is to get people competent enough that they're not afraid to make mistakes to learn from, right? Like I make mistakes all the time, but I have enough experience and understanding that I know why that mistake happened as soon as I see it, and I can easily go back and either fix it or find out what the problem is. I don't get stuck because I don't know everything. And that's where I want to help get other people to. I want them to, sit down and not be afraid of what they're looking at. And it's a weird thing to say, but I see it in the forums often. There is an actual fear. There are people who don't even unpack their lasers because they're afraid of breaking something. I don't mean, I'm not laughing at them. I understand it. But it's not a really big deal. And I really believe if you can sit down and talk to somebody who knows, it won't take you long to get to the point where you're just comfortable in diving in. And the benefit on the laser is it's really hard to break anything in the sense of on my CNC router, if I do something wrong, I've either broken $100 bit or I've screwed up somebody's irreplaceable piece of wood, right? Like there's almost zero room for error in the CNC, because but with the laser, it's true I can screw up the material, but I'm usually not going to break the laser itself, right? Like
Please don't
especially
take
if I'm
that
paying
as a
attention.
challenge.
Yeah, that's not a warranty thing. That's in the sense that nothing is literally touching anything, right? In that sense, like the laser's moving, unless you, yeah, that's what I wanted to say. The laser's a great place to experiment. It's a great place to have fun, and you don't need to be afraid that something terrible is going to go wrong.
Yeah, there's always the fear. So as a machinist and manufacturing engineer, one of the things you fear a lot is crashing expensive equipment. It happens to everybody. It's going to happen to you. It's okay. Same with dropping a motorcycle. I've done it many times. But like once you can get over that threshold of fear, and if you can have resources to point you in the right direction, whether that be emailing LightBurn support, that's me and a team of like 12 people now, a lot of people. Like we're here to help. We're always here by email. Or you can find a private person who does trainings one-on-one, or courses, or YouTube. It's all there. You just need to like feel comfortable in finding the resources to find that answer. Use our docs, use our YouTube, find someone to help you out. We're always here by email.
Yeah, and
I would also like to say, from Thunder Laser's perspective, we are here as a team to make our clients happy and successful. And I always say, like, if you know, my number is on the website. If you call that number, I will generally answer. Our support line is available for that. And we're trying to, and we have an amazing community, both like the people on this call and outside this call, that if you ask questions in the Facebook groups or whatever, people are generally happy to help. So like that, getting over that I like to say in our makerspace that we want to reduce the barrier to entry, and lasers do a pretty good job of that. But if you're concerned, please don't hesitate to reach out.
Yeah, I would say that when I was shopping for a laser and I came across Thunder Laser and there was a number there and I called it and Shannon actually answered the phone, that was a big thing for me. I mean, I'm not going to say it swayed me one way or the other, but it made Thunder Laser a very real thing to me, that I could actually talk to a person. He answered my questions. It wasn't a hard sale or anything like that. I didn't own the laser yet. I was just thinking of it. And it just points to Thunder Laser being a great company. So.
And you know what? I don't know how many people know the sort of story. Like, Shannon, do you tell everybody that you chat to sort of how you got into selling these lasers to begin with? Or could you share that story? Because I think it's really interesting if some of our customers haven't heard it.
Yeah, it's not like on my checklist of talking to people or anything, but yeah, like I've worked in the maker community for a long time, and I'm trying to, my kind of like mission in life is to help people get paid to do what they're passionate about. That's kind of what makes me happy. I built the makerspace with that specifically in mind. I don't know if anybody's ever tried to open a makerspace, but it's really hard. And then Thunder Laser, I had several lasers in our makerspace, and then I had met the guys in Thunder in Shenzhen when I was there for an event, and ended up touring their factory and just being blown away by how they're building their machines and the quality. And I got one, and immediately after I got one, I'm like, this is way better than our other machines. And we ended up selling our other machines, and then I ended up referring people to Thunder, and then Thunder asked me if I would help them sell lasers, and now I'm accidentally the Thunder Laser rep. But it comes from that point of, like, my whole goal was to try and help people get to the point where they were a little bit in control of their destiny, and lasers have done that. Thunder Laser specifically is an amazing platform for doing that. I'm not going to claim it's the only one out there, but it's pretty good. And then that combination with LightBurn has, like, it's funny. I think one of Thunder Laser's best selling features, when compared to companies like Trotec, is that we use software that these walled garden companies, you can buy a $50,000 laser, and my $15,000 laser is going to be better in part because of LightBurn. And that's like, I when people ask me about LightBurn, like if I do hard sales, it's that people should buy LightBurn with their laser. And I think out of all of our community, maybe 3 people haven't bought LightBurn because I'm like, it's that much better. And one other thing I say is people are immediately thinking it's subscription based. And I will say, out of like all the software on the planet, like LightBurn has among the least predatory licensing model, in that if you don't want to pay for your yearly subscription, you don't have to. And like 4 years later, you can enable your subscription and get all the updates. There's
really, no like back update cost. Like it's just $30, you get another whole year, even if it's been expired for 5 years. Like, and
one of the things that annoys me a little bit is that you don't auto renew my subscription. Like I would like that. I like, for me, it is very worth it. But I feel
discussed.
like you guys are.
We know. We know.
You guys could be a wee bit more predatory, and it would actually help me. So
that's fair. It does change some things on how we store customer data, which is not at all because there's regulations. But it has been discussed. Yeah.
It was interesting. I came to LightBurn without thinking much about it because, like I said, I've already know a lot of that type of software. So when I bought my laser, it wasn't really something I was thinking about until my LightBurn, and I bought it. And then I started out thinking it was just going to, to my detriment, thinking it was just going to be some light, make your laser run kind of thing. And the more and more I use it, and the deeper and deeper it gets, I keep coming up with things. Oh, it doesn't do this. Z can say this. I told her 2 or 3 things. Oh, the only thing it doesn't do is this. And then, sure enough, I look it up and there's a button, or it's right. All there. If I was to make my list of things, there would only be conveniences to me, and it doesn't mean it would be convenient to other people. I haven't found anything that it can't do, only things that I have to learn how to use, how to make it.
So we recently had LBX, our first in-person trade show, all LightBurn, and one of my favorite moments from that was sitting in a room with 2 other developers, and we just had, I think, 120 people sitting in a room just firing questions off at us as developers and support people. And I was like, I haven't been able to do this for 2 years. And Oz is like, oh, that feature's been here since version 1.0. Here's where it is. Click, click, boom, does the thing. Or one of our developers got told, oh, there's an issue with this feature. And he's like, oh, interesting. Whips out a laptop, pushes a fix in like 15 minutes. It's like, oh, we can do that. Cool.
Nice. So I put a poll up. It seems like 5 people have filled it out. I see there's 15 people on the webinar. So if anyone who has not filled it out could fill it out. It says, would you like to take more LightBurn classes? We might host more webinars like this. So let us know. You have about 15 more seconds to fill that out. And then I'm going to pop up another couple polls that will help us understand what we should do next, other topics wise. We have another webinar coming up next month that's focused on 3D making for lasers. So like do it using the slicer program that you typically use with 3D printing, but using that to output layers so you can create 3-dimensional objects with stackable pieces of wood or whatever material, acrylic, whatever material you want to use, as well as gears, boxes, different kind of cool programs that help you create different 3D objects. So we're going to do that next month. And then from there, we still have to decide what our next ones are. So we love to hear
any ideas feedback. People have would be great. Somebody's asking about the pass-through. I linked the great video that you guys did for the pass-through to it. I feel like talking a lot about the pass-through is tricky, especially when that video is so good. Every time I want to do pass-through, I just watch that video again, and I'm like, okay, that's so easy. Do you have anything that you might want to add to that video, or should we just refer the customer or the person to that video? Curtis that's asking. Colin, that's for you.
Is this the print and cut video?
Yeah, so there's one that shows like the mermaid, which works with the pass-through. That's great.
Yeah, I mean, start there. If you have further questions, always just email us. Or, you know, if you guys have further questions or, you know, you think you can do better, by all means.
It's a confusing enough concept without having like cameras set up from different angles and showing, like, I would say to Curtis, watch the video and then just call me if you have any questions. Like using that function is deceptively easy when you've watched that video.
Yeah.
And explaining it, I feel like we might just confuse it when it is that video does such a good job of it. And by the way it was implemented for something that is like technically very complicated, the way it was implemented makes it's almost like cheating. It makes it so much easier.
Yeah, we actually have a new print and cut video. It's called Align Your Projects with Print and Cut. It's on the YouTube, the LightBurn Software YouTube channel. It was put out 8 months ago. And so that has a little bit more production value. But there's also an older one with the mermaid, is just what you're referring to. That does pass through more. But yeah.
Okay.
Oh, we're getting some interesting results for our questions. A lot of people want to learn about features on Thunder Laser machines, marketing and website optimization. A lot of people in the beginner stage that want to learn more about their machines.
See, there's like you could do your own stream there on all the marketing stuff.
Yeah, that's my nerdy area of interest, so it'll probably be me. I said, Shannon, like, there's so many people on these forums that are like, what's the hardest part about, you know, your laser business? And everyone's like, the business part. So
there's a question about calibrating. There's a question about calibrating the camera, which I can't answer because, to be honest, I had difficulty calibrating. I just kept doing it over and over again until I got it. But that was the there's a question about calibrating with that sheet with the dots on it.
Yeah, the best way that I can guide people to do is watch the video and have the docs and go step by step. That said, there is a new camera system that has been developed. We're testing it, and it should be out soon. And it uses kind of more of a QR code sort of setup that's a little bit easier. That workflow definitely needs improvement. It is confusing, and we're working on it. So in the meantime, just watch our YouTube video and have the docs and read through them step by step. What you're seeing when you look at that dot grid is, like, if you see an image come up and it has like a warped dot grid, it shows you like a warped fisheye camera view. That's just LightBurn's view after it's passed through all of the math to figure out what the fisheye is. As long as you get the good number, you can proceed to the next steps. Don't worry too much about what it shows.
The only suggestion I have, and it could be in the video, I haven't watched it for a while, but when you get to the point where you burn the crosshairs for alignment, make that as big as your laser bed. Yeah.
Yep. If you're getting comfortable on your laser testing, yeah, materials test, great thing to learn how to use in LightBurn if you haven't yet. It's under laser tools.
Oh, I see. Yeah. With laser, he's talking about doing different materials, but yeah, the materials test in LightBurn is really great. The only issue that I have is that I usually tell people to send the job to the laser and then start on the laser. Is that been enabled in the material test, or when you do the material test, it looks like you have to just start from the materials test?
You can save it as an RD file and then send the RD file, but it's just starting it in LightBurn is totally fine. I don't know why you do it otherwise.
I have found that, and maybe this was in a previous release, but that my air high or low settings wouldn't come across when I started the job from the laser. Is that?
If you go into the cut settings or the materials test generator, at the bottom there's 3 buttons: text setting, border setting, edit material setting, and those will override whatever you have in those layers. So you're going to want to make sure that you have air turned on in those.
Okay, that's good.
Cool. Well, we're at time. That was awesome. I feel like we could go on and on. Like, there's so much to learn about LightBurn, and there's so many projects you can make. It's just endless. So I think we should probably do this again. It seems like people are interested. Thanks so much to Ron and Colin for popping in and sharing your expertise and your knowledge. And yeah, anytime, feel free to reach out to us at support or go on our Facebook group. We always check it. There's also a lot of other people that have very specific knowledge in very specific areas that you can definitely share with you. As well as, you know, LightBurn has the greatest forum ever. And obviously you'll find Colin on there. And yeah, so thanks so much. I'll be sending us a follow-up email that automatically comes after this webinar with info about Ron's one-on-one mentoring and workshops, as well as I'll publish a newsletter for everybody that attended that has some of the links that we talked about to the hotkeys and the different documents that we brought up. So yeah, check it, keep an eye out for that email. And thanks everyone for attending. I hope you got some value out of this, and we'll be doing it again next month, focused on 3D making for lasers. So hopefully we'll see you there. Sign up right away.
Z, are you focusing on any specific software for the 3D or just 3D in general?
Fusion 360, Slicer for Fusion 360.
Which is like expired software, but I'm going to show people how to use that. But there's also other tools that allow you to make structured things like, I don't know what it's called, boxes.py, festi.info. Like that software is like a little miracle piece of free software that's online. So, and then I'm hoping that, I know that one of the guys that's coming on, Austin, he's like, I love being a makerspace because you meet these like obsessive people, and he makes these crazy cool like assemblies and stuff. So yeah, he'll be online talking about his process too.
Yeah, in gears and all sorts of things like that. So awesome.
I noticed that. Notice on the forums that a lot of people miss it, but Fusion 360 has a free version. I think it's a hobbyist license or something along that line. If you have first glance, it looks like it costs, but if you dig a little deeper or search for Fusion 360 free, you should find a very usable.
They try and trick you into paying for it, but you just got to be persistent and you can get it for free.
Yeah, don't fall for their tricks and manipulations. You can actually get it for free. So we'll send a link when we start advertising the next workshop, which will probably be about a week or two before it actually happens, May 8th. We'll send a link so you can download the program if you want to follow along or practice with it ahead of time. But yeah, thank you so much, everybody. And I'll be posting this on YouTube afterwards, so you can watch it and you know, slow down and repeat the parts that you want to practice. So okay, thanks everyone. Take care.
And if you didn't get your
questions, happy lasering.
Yeah, if you didn't get your questions answered, email us.
Yeah, or support at lightburnsoftware.com. We're always there.
Awesome. Take care.
Okay.
Bye.
Yeah.
Everyone, thank you.